Hello and welcome to another interesting We Uplift TV moment. I'm Natalie from Healing Isis and from Whispering Energy. And today I'm talking once again with Tawand. And I've talked with her before about a variety of fascinating things, especially her own personal journey. And at one point, Tawand, you had mentioned something like release yourself from the dead weight, which number one sounds very profound. And of course, number two brings up the question, great, but how? Share a little bit with us, not just when it comes to depression and other things, but in daily life. What do you mean with dead weight and how can we achieve release from it?
Yes, well, Natalie, I truly believe that we are all energy.
Hmm.
And I personally believe that there are times when we just have to take personal inventory of our energy and the energy of others and how that fits with our life. Is it congruent? Is it healthy? Is this what is my payoff centering around these these friendships and these relationships versus what is theirs?
Hmm.
Since we truly can only control ourselves, then and we can't control others as much as sometimes in the past we've tried.
Right.
You know, truly, every person who comes into our life is there, I believe, to teach us a lesson.
Hmm.
And sometimes people's relationships simply run its course. But since it's our life, it's up to us to see it for what it is and bless that person as they come into our life, but simply know that that particular relationship has run its course. And sometimes it's not a bad thing. It's simply a change in direction, a shifting. But we must always be present in knowing um, and being aware of those friendships and just simply releasing them to simply be, but also blessing them as they go.
Now, when you're saying that, you use the term simply, and I'm just thinking because, like you, we have similar ideas about this. And yes, you just need to reflect, and then you need to say, okay, this relationship, we're not really teaching each other anything anymore. We're not really moving forward. It's more like a should. But it's not necessarily simple for a lot of people to let go of friends or even in instances of close relationship with family members if it just doesn't fit anymore. So what's the process other than saying, just let go, look at it and, we're done. How do you do that?
Yes, well, sometimes I guess that's like an individual decision
Hmm.
that folks make. Sometimes the process is very abrupt based off the situation that happened, but then sometimes it's a gradual process. The speed of that process and the evolution of that process. It's actually up to that individual. However, just in that though, we always want to be cognizant of just the way that we sort of break the ties. I would say just do it as gently as possible, but if it's necessary, do it. Whether you need to have a conversation with that person and or visit that person and simply explain to them how you're feeling about the relationship and just letting them know that that basically it's really run its course and like I said, the process it can be very painful, especially when you deal with friends and family members
Hmm.
because after you take that step, then you actually have to follow through with that action. And so sometimes, say for example, if it's a financial situation where someone has always depended on you financially for something, and they're going to call. They're going to
Yeah.
call because you're their go-to person.
Right.
You have to be okay with saying no. And if that person truly loves and respects you, they'll be there and they'll understand and hopefully eventually get that lesson. But you just sometimes have to say no. You have to say no to others in order to say yes to yourself. Natalie.
And there you just said two really important things. Once again, I mean, I can pick up more, but I think the first one is, that we have to set our own limits to create the best life possible for ourselves. So yes, sometimes we have to say no to others, as hard as that can be, because I think most of us were more used to giving, giving, giving. Um,
Right.
the other piece that you mentioned previously was that we always want to bless the person or explain. Why is it, in your opinion, so important that we try and end it on a good note, for lack of a better term?
Yes, and truly because what we give out, it comes back to us. I personally believe within just the universal laws, it comes back to us, and so we always, I would think, ideally speaking, we always want to end it on a good note. Now, sometimes based off the situation, and if we meet some type of resistance, it's
Hmm.
not necessarily our energy being resistance because we're fully accepting and embracing it. Sometimes we may have to go solo, whether that's um, creating a letter and letting people know. Like, say for example, there was a situation with a relationship, and it was not the best situation, but still, that person in our mind, whether they're present in our current space, may still have some control over us.
Hmm.
And if that was a relationship of power and control, maybe it's not best for us to call them up or go out for a cup of tea, right?
Yeah.
However, we have other methods, whether that's us simply sitting down in a quiet space, still in our mind, and just writing a letter to that person, whether we mail it or not, and
Hmm.
getting it out, but then also blessing that person at the end. But just knowing that you are free and they are free to simply be. But in all things, we must use wisdom, of course.
Now, the other piece about the releasing dead weight, what you've explained to us so far, was mostly focused on relationships. Is there any other kind of dead weight that we need to release, in your opinion, and how would we go about some of that?
I think that there are other avenues. Sometimes, and I don't know about you, Natalie, but sometimes I can be my worst critic. And
I think we all are our own worst critics.
yes, and we do that. Well, it has to be perfect and everything. And so sometimes I feel that that could be an anchor around
Hmm.
us and in our space. And sometimes we simply have to give ourselves permission to just simply be and just know that as long as or our goal is to be the best that we know how to do, and we're trying and we're moving forward and we're making steps towards progress, that's good enough. And that sometimes that's very tough, especially when we're dealing with a lot of negative self-talk, to quiet those thoughts and rise above those thoughts. But essentially, that is a form of dead weight, the pressure that we place on ourselves.
Right. And then do you work, for clarification? You said we have to be very cognizant, we have to be really clear about it. Is that where meditation and prayer or journaling come in for you?
Yes, absolutely. And Natalie, I've shared with you earlier before we began the interview here. I have several journals, and some
Hmm.
of them look alike. That is a form of the therapeutic process, of the healing process,
Hmm.
to capture those thoughts and have a safe space to simply get it out, and
Yeah.
also just a form of release.
Right.
And then in just with the prayers and with the meditation, that's a form of release, and that's also a form of taking care of yourself, your
Hmm.
overall self, your spiritual self, which is your utmost self. We are spirit first, Natalie, as you know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, when you said earlier, I have so many journals, I was like, oh yeah, which ones do you mean right now? Now, with me, the thing is, though, I usually don't go back. I have the journals where I just try to release, and I don't ever go back to them. I still have them, but I don't ever go back to them. Then I've got the other journals where I might try and keep track of what I'm doing, and that's a different story. But I've got them all over the place, just like you. So,
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And sometimes we don't need to go back to that space. We don't need to, I guess, tap into that energy because that
Mm-hmm.
energy is the past. And we
Right.
live in the present moment and we've moved forward from that. But it served its purpose at the time that
Mm-hmm.
we shared those intimate thoughts. And then we've moved on.
Yes.
Yes.
So, put it in the journal, put it away, release it. Make sure that you do it all on a good note. And earlier we talked about forgiveness, so I think that's also part of it. And then just be present. I like that.
Oh,
I like that.
thank you, Natalie.
And on that note, I want to thank you, Tawan, for being present for this little segment. I know we're going to talk again, but this was very insightful. I think it's always helpful to know how other people are dealing with some of the things that we all go through, the lessons that we learn. So I really appreciate your time. And I want to let everybody know who's watching that Tawan can be easily reached on her Facebook page. So Facebook, just Tawan, and I think it says coach if I'm not mistaken. That's the definition there. So just go on there and chat with her and see what else, what other informations you can get. So thank you so much once again, Tawan.